You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm Nick Beveridge, here with your co-host, The Mockery, Jeremy Kitchen.
Hey, it's me, The Mockery, Jeremy Kitchen. It's probably not even going to show that on the episode because it goes to who's talking, and I wasn't talking. How's it going today, Nick?
Good. I'm just getting mocked at by Jeremy Kitchen in the background when nobody's looking.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Nick. So remember that. I was just mocking what you were saying, and I wasn't even mocking. It was just imitating. So whatever.
Appreciate that. How was your weekend?
It was good, man. How was your weekend?
Pretty nice. I was obsessed with Chat GPT all weekend, and I was just asking it questions.
I have only asked it one question, and it's in my little saved scripts here, which is kind of cool. So speaking of asking one question, we do ask more than one question to David Sanford today. Nick, tell us a little bit about David Sanford.
Well, David is from Virginia, and he's also investing in lots and lots of properties. That may sound pretty like normal, like, hey, this is a real estate podcast and you're interviewing an investor. Big surprise. Here's the big surprise. This guy has over 55 rental properties now, and he still has a full-time job. He still hasn't quit his full-time job, and he has over 55 rentals, and he's a young guy, and he started, it's not a trust fund baby. He wasn't fed with a silver spoon. And I think you're really going to enjoy this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was awesome. David provides a lot of really cool insight, especially getting past that 10-unit hump on how to do it. He just he found an easy way to continue growing his portfolio using other people's money. Now he's rocking it in the commercial realm while doing some residential stuff too. So it was cool to hear a story for sure.
Yes, I learned a lot from him. I'm glad to have him on, and you will be too. So everybody, grab your protein shakes. Shake them up and down, throw them in your mouth, and enjoy. Everybody, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. I am here with my co-host, Jeremy Kitchen. Good morning.
Hey, top of the morning to you, gentlemen. How we doing today?
Doing great. And our guest today is David Sanford. How are you this morning?
Doing well, Nick. How are you, Jeremy? Pleasure being here this morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us. So real quick, David, why don't you kind of go into your real estate story? What got you started into real estate investing? And let's kind of dive into it if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So I hate to give the same answer as probably 90% of your other interviewees or guests on the show, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad kicked it all off. You know, I think that's the book that kind of motivates everybody. So I was going to college. I was doing a little bit of stock investing, and one of my coworkers in the Army, he was like, hey, you know, I see you're doing like stocks and investing and things like that. Like, you should read this book. So hopped on that book, or got the book, and I probably read it like 5 times in a month. Just crushed it. And then, it just happened to, the timing worked out where I was moving from one house to another house. So I was like, instead of selling it, let's rent it out and see how we like it.
Now, do you normally read a book like 5 times?
Here frequently, or recently, I've been doing that more frequent. Back in like September, I read the 10X Rule Mentor, Grant Cardone, and that was just very motivating. Yeah, so I think since September, I've probably read that 5 times, or audiobook, but some people don't say that's reading. But
yeah, I noticed that when I first was introduced to Rich Dad Poor Dad, that book, you know, I hated books prior to that, and I never read anything, but that was the first time I was so intrigued by a book. I read it again and again and again, and then I got it on audio and listened to the audio again and again, probably like maybe 20 times, like obsessively over the course of a few years. So I don't know what it is about that book that's got everybody so, you know, on their seat about real estate investing or just changing their financial makeup. And I know, Jeremy, you did something similar too with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Didn't you listen to it on audio when you were an employee?
I was. I don't even know why that happened, but it was like I had the Audible subscription, and I'm like, hey, Rich Dad sounds good. And like you, David, and probably Nick, you know, it was one of those books where it opens a gateway in your mind. It opens like, oh, there is more to life than just doing W-2 work. There's more to life than being an employee. And obviously, you know, a lot of us probably had poor dad mindset growing up, but there's a different way to live life for sure. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think that book right there, like I said, I read it for a couple times or a few times when I first got it, and then every year, here I am like 6 or 7 years into investing, and I'm always reading that book another once or twice a year, and I think a lot of that's because of like once you get into real estate and you start getting the wheels are spinning and you start making traction, you're growing the portfolio and expanding. I think it's comforting to kind of just go back to the basics. Like every now and then you might get so overwhelmed, you're just like, just go back to the basics, go over Rich Dad Poor Dad, and just that foundational knowledge that you get from that book to kind of reignite your motivation and inspiration.
Let's kind of dive into your portfolio. So what time did you start getting into real estate investing, David?
Yeah, 2016. Central Virginia is where I'm from. So my wife and I in college when we were both working on our undergrads at the time. We rented an apartment, whatever, and then we're like, let's just buy a house. So we found this house on Zillow that was a short sale. So we purchased a house. I think we purchased it, and then it took a while to close. Short sales, they take a long time to close. So we had to move to my dad's for a little bit and kind of move back home. Nobody wants to do that, right? But yeah, we moved in there. Got the house
Can we
finally. I
can we
think.
pause you real quick if you don't? Can I cut you off another time? For those that are curious about what is a short sell, and from the name of it, it sounds like it should happen quickly, right? But can you explain to the audience what a short sell is and why it's not a short process?
Yeah, not a short process at all. It's basically when somebody owns a house and they owe, say, $100,000 left on the loan or something like that. They're essentially asking the bank if they can sell it for less just to kind of walk away. So the bank's going to take a loss. They're going to fall short on the sale to pay the bank off. So that's why it takes so long, because the bank has to go through a review process and they have to approve it. And sometimes, they counter offer, and it could take weeks and weeks before you even know if your offer was accepted or if they're going to counter or whatever. And then, nobody likes to take a loss. Banks don't like to take a loss, so it just takes a long time to go through that process to sell it short of what the balance is.
That makes sense. Yeah, so go ahead and continue with that, definitely. So
Yeah. So from there, I bought that house. We lived in there for a couple years. I think earlier I said I bought it in 2015. We bought that one house in 2012, and then we moved out like in 2015, 2016. So by then we had both graduated. We got our bachelor's degrees and making decent salaries. So we were looking for just a bigger house, get out of the little $100,000 starter house and move into something bigger, nicer area, nicer neighborhood. So that just happened to be the time that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right on the same late 2015 or so. So read that book, and then yeah, it was like our mortgage on that house was like $800, something like that. And then I just called property managers, and the first one, looking back, I should have done a more thorough interview process. But basically, the first one that picked up the phone, I was like, "Hey, manage this house for me." So I remember telling them like, "My mortgage is 800. If I can rent it for $1,000, like I'm happy. This is what Robert Kiyosaki says to do, so I'm gonna do it." So, again, looking back, that's not enough cash flow. So, learn a lesson. But luckily, they came out, looked at it, and they were like, "Yeah, we can probably rent this for like 1,300." So then it worked out and made that profit there, and just kind of got the itch. So kind of started growing from that point.
and when you were first doing your first rental property, obviously, like when you look at just baseline numbers of 800 and 1,000, you're like, oh, that cash flow is $200. It's not exactly how it always works in the real world. Unfortunately, there's capex expenses, there's vacancy, things break. Your $200 a month gets cash flow gets eaten up very quick with all that stuff, right? So, how much do you think you were making when you first started renting that property, just on a net cash flow basis?
Yeah. So initially I had said like if I could get 1,000 for it, I'm happy. But then the property manager came out and was like, you can probably get 1,300 for it. So we rented it for 1,300. My mortgage was 800, so it's like a $500 spread. But out of the 1,300, 10% of that's going to the property manager. You've got to set aside so much because it's going to be vacant, or you got to plan for it to be vacant. A month or so out of the year. You've got HVAC units, you've got regular maintenance. There's just so many other expenses that kind of eat into that. But I think on average, I was probably pocketing around 200, somewhere around there, 150 to 200 or so.
Cool. That's a good start for a first property, absolutely. So, yeah. What did you do from there? What was your next step?
Yeah, so from there, we were living in the new house. We had this one rental property, and we were making a couple $100 a month. And then we were like, well, we didn't have any kids yet. Now I've got 3 kids, so it's a little bit different. I don't know if I would have quite taken the leap quite as hard as I did if I had kids. But yeah, so we rented that out for a while, and then About a year later, we had saved up some cash, so we were like, "Hey, let's go back and find our second property, which would be our first true rental property, because the first one was just something we just turned into it." But so then we found this house on Zillow. They were only asking like $90,000 for it. We made the offer like $91,000, and we got it. So that one we used our own cash. We did like the 20% down on it. Yeah, and just kind of I think I put in like new floors and new paint and threw it on the market and rented that one out for cash flow as well.
Anything you want to add to that, Nick?
No, I'm just curious, like, what are some of the challenges that you face going through that?
To get started, a lot of it was just courage, that it was like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. So I think a lot of like the knowledge that's out there today didn't really quite exist back in like 2016. Maybe that's because social media was still somewhat newer. You couldn't learn as much as you can today. You didn't have all that knowledge at your fingertips. So I think a lot of it was just taking the plunge, right? Like, I wasn't 100% confident in what I was doing, but it's just kind of taking the gamble and seeing if it panned out. So that was probably the biggest challenge, just getting the courage to jump out there and start taking action.
Yeah, I so badly wish like Bigger Pockets was known and available like way back when I got started. I would have, I think it would have been so much better because all I really had to go off of was Rich Dad Poor Dad, just these like imaginary numbers. No real proof of concept, and then any investors that I kind of knew back then, they weren't really doing the same kind of things. But yeah, I think we're just living in such a great age where things are just so much easier information wise to digest. And even with like newer, like with Chat GPT or whatever that's called, it's so easy just to put in, give me 10 steps that I can take right now to get started in investing. And it will just spit it out, go do this stuff. And it's like amazing. It's just, we live in such an amazing world for opportunists. Yeah, it's just not like it was just a few short years ago. Times have really changed when it comes to social influence and just available information online, trying to find niche groups that are doing what you want to do. So much easier to just go all in on a certain industry these days.
Sure. And just kind of to piggyback off that just a little bit, obviously Rich Dad, like, I mean, as great as it was, it didn't exactly tell you how to invest. It told you how to get ready to invest. There's definitely a difference there, but one thing with information nowadays, like there's an abundance of it, and that can be a blessing and a curse to a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people get analysis by paralysis. People think I have to get put into this little box. There's a million different ways to make money in this business. So just find something that works and continue rolling with that for sure. So David, when you started out, you were primarily a single family home investor. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So that was our second property that I just mentioned, our second investment property. And then from there, it was the same thing. We would save up the money for the down payment and buy the next house, save up, buy the next house. And I think it was somewhere around like house number 5 is when my lender was like, hey, like, let me tell you about this cash out refinance, this loan out there, this loan refinance product that I didn't know existed. So we tapped into that. And then the very first house that we bought, I think we probably had all in like $25,000 on it, but we refinanced it and we were able to pull out like $40,000. So then we used that and then we like bought 2 and so then we were kind of like just refinancing previous houses to buy the next, house or 2. And then it was somewhere around like 8 houses, 10 houses or so. I was at a school for the military, and that's when I discovered Bigger Pockets. It's funny you brought that up. So I think it was like 2018 probably. I was at this school. I didn't have a car or anything, so I would just kind of like go to class during the day and then just sit in my room at night. So it was very boring, but hopped on YouTube, found Bigger Pockets, and then that's where I learned like OPM, other people's money, and how to leverage that to really expand the portfolio. So yeah, that was the part that kind of changed everything in the future of my portfolio.
So David, did I hear you right? Did you say you didn't have a car or anything?
At that school, I had a car, but when I was at the school, yeah, we weren't able to leave. So
Oh, got it. I'm like, man, how does a guy own 8 houses but no vehicles?
It's because they're assets, not liabilities.
yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, maybe if I lived like in the heart of a city and just took a bus everywhere. But yeah, no, where I live, you got to have the car.
Yeah, so let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Obviously, you started out using your own money, which is it's a viable strategy for sure. But definitely, once you start leveraging other people's money, it allows you a little bit more freedom and a little bit more movement. Tell us, how easy was that transition for you? Did you have a hard time doing that at first, like using other people's money and putting that on the line?
Yeah, so when I was at the school, and I was on YouTube and I discovered other people's money or hard money, private money, whatever you want to call it. I remember like I was like, wow, like this is it. This is gonna change everything. So I remember like I went home, finally finished the school. I remember my wife and I were at dinner, and I was like, hey, like I discovered like the secret. Like don't tell anybody, you know. Like I don't know if this is public knowledge. So, but no, I was like, you know, there's this thing called other people's money. Like I'm gonna, and that's what I'm gonna do. You know, I'm gonna find somebody that's got a lot of money and just borrow money, pay them interest and everything, and buy a house and then go to a bank, refinance it, pay that person back, and just repeat. And yeah, she was like, yeah, that sounds cool, but we don't know anybody that's rich. So yeah, it was a little challenging to start finding that. You know, it took a lot of courage to ask a lot of people, but eventually I started raising some capital and um, finding some success with that, but it wasn't quite enough to really grow the portfolio. So then I started using hard money, which is you know, it's a lot easier to find hard money lenders, and I'm sure of course you're aware of it, but yeah, that's when it really expanded.
I mean, hard money's absolutely great. Private money's a viable option too. It is definitely hard to convince someone to come in at 100% loan to value, especially, I don't know what terms you were offering, but like, if you're using zero of your own money down to get a property, like you're not invested in it at all. And like a lot of hard money lenders, they like to see some sort of skin in the game, whether that's cross collateralization or a down payment. Were you still coming to these properties with a down payment, or were you getting those financed through your private lenders as well?
The private money or private lenders, I was raising 100% of purchase plus renovation. So that was, yeah, that helps a lot, especially like in scaling. You know, you've got more capital in the bank to kind of pay those interest payments every month, or kind of have a cushion for reserves. But yeah, then with the hard money though, I think I did my first few with that was more like I think I had to put down like 10% of the purchase price, and then they would fund the other 90% plus they would fund 100% of the renovations. Is kind of how we started out. And then after we did a few dozen deals like that. They were like, hey, so now my go-to hard money lender just does 100% of everything since we've built the resume. We built the partnership up and we're comfortable with each other. And yeah, we just have a really good relationship now.
So when you started switching to getting like almost 100% of your deals funded, did you notice, were you able to just take on more and take less profits overall, or were your profits about the same, or were they going up?
Yeah, it was closely the same because at the same time I was getting a lot better at analyzing deals, and making sure that the purchase prices were. So I was paying more because I'm borrowing 100%, right? So I'm paying more on interest because I'm not using my own cash. So I would just that extra money I'm spending, I would just kind of bake into the purchase price to make sure like I'm buying it discounted enough to make up for that extra cost of borrowing at 100%.
All right. So you're a smart person, and you basically just bake that into your costs. And this is what I want people to pay attention to if like they're worried about like hard money, or like, man, it's so expensive though, so I'm not going to do that. Like, just bake it into your costs, and if it's not a deal with hard money, then pass on it. If it's a deal with hard money, what's the difference? This is just an expense. It's like having to buy an extra set of appliances. It's not a big deal. If the deal works, do it. If it doesn't work, just look at the deal, not necessarily what your costs are, right?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like I'll pay 30% interest. If the deal makes sense, it makes sense. Like I don't care what the lender wants to make on it. If it makes sense with their terms, and I'm going to jump on it.
Same with like wholesalers. I'll pay $100,000 for a wholesale cost as long as the deal makes sense to me at the end, and I run that all in my numbers. Great. You're gonna make 100 grand. I'm gonna make 100 grand. That's a win-win for us. That's awesome. So yeah, definitely hard money and private money is a good way to definitely leverage yourself. When you were doing private money, were you offering first position liens or any sort of collateral, or were people going with you because they trusted you? Like, what's the story on that?
It was a mix. It was most of it. Yeah, I would offer first position, or however I could structure it. But I'd always make sure like their note is tied to the property. So I can't refinance, I can't sell or anything without paying them back. Um, Always very very upfront with everything. Sending progress pictures and hey, this is I ran into an issue here, like we found mold or whatever it may be. Just kind of make sure that they feel as much of like a business partner as a lending partner. So they're in the deal with me as well.
And then when you're analyzing properties, and obviously you're using other people's money, either hard or private, what numbers are you typically looking for? Like, how do you analyze your property so it makes sense? What numbers do you look for?
So now I'm looking. I think it's a pretty standard formula, but like 70% of the ARV, after repair, after renovation value, I'll take 70% of that, and then just back out my maintenance costs or renovation costs. And usually, so so say that that number equals $80,000. So I'll try to purchase it like 75, 70, something like that. That's kind of the first part of the analysis there, and then from there I move into, okay, so once I go to a bank and I'm refinancing it, what's my mortgage going to be? My PITI, and make sure that that number makes sense as a rental property as well, and there's enough cash flow there, especially with rates jumping up the way they are.
So, David, at this point in your story, I think you're somewhere, a little over 8 houses now. Um, what are some of the most common mistakes that you think like newer investors in this stage are making that could be avoided that you maybe caught on to?
Yeah, I think probably my first few mistakes was, once you start wanting to expand and use private money and hard money, like you need a portfolio, you kind of need like a resume, so to speak. But I was doing all this and I wasn't on Facebook, I wasn't, putting my name out there at all, showing my experience and what I'm doing and going through. So, once I started like raising capital from people, it was like, oh, you do real estate? Like, so they kind of look at me like I'm brand new at this. I'm like, no, like I've done a couple of houses, like I'm not new. So I think if I were to give advice to somebody just starting out, I would say like document everything, like let it be known, blast it out there, get your name out there. Even if you're not even doing a deal, if you're just learning like the definition of ARV, like put that out there, post that. 99% of the population has no idea what that is, and that shows that you're kind of like a subject matter expert in that aspect of the business.
Yeah, that's really good information for sure. I know just the power of social media and just posting what you're doing, it not only allows you to add credibility, but it adds more deals to your plate because people seeing you do these things and they want to partner with you, they want in on it, right? They want to absolutely experience the joy of real estate investing and all the terrors of it at the same time. So,
No, I was just saying, just get your name out there. It worked out great because around the same time that I started getting my name out there and started telling people what I was doing and raising capital and everything, I'd already done a decent bit of deals, so the experience was there. So I think that
Mhm.
probably welcomed a lot more wholesalers to bring me more deals once they realized like I was a true buyer in the area. They could see that I'm actually doing deals and I'm not just somebody just getting started that just wants to look at your emails just to like I'm a legit person here.
that's the kind of relationships Nick's built up too. So Nick has a lot of wholesaler relationships up here. And speaking of, what you talked about earlier, Nick analyzes deals the exact same way as your 70% after repair value. That's exactly the formula that I learned how to invest in real estate. Just 70% minus repair costs, basically.
Yep. Keep it simple. So no, I just wanted to ask, a lot of these deals that you were doing, were they mostly, and forgive me if you already said this, were they mostly local, around your hometown, or did you start branching out into other markets?
Yeah, these are all local. I live in Chesterfield, Virginia, which is like just south of Richmond, Virginia. So most of my deals were
Okay.
like in Chesterfield, Richmond, or so. And then it wasn't up until I got to like 30 houses that I started looking at new markets. So around 30 houses, I started tapping into like Roanoke, which is like 3 hours west of where I am, and then about to close on one about an hour east on Virginia Beach.
So David, what got you interested in starting to invest in other markets outside your hometown?
Yeah, so the Richmond market that where I invest, or I live in Chesterfield, Virginia, which is just south of Richmond, but so this market started getting very heavy with other investors, so it's just a lot harder to find deals. So around 30 houses or so into my investing career, maybe 40, something like that. A deal came across my table that was located in Roanoke, which is like 3 hours west of where I live. And this deal was it was too good to pass up. I didn't really have intentions to move into another market, but it was just somebody needed a contract on their portfolio very fast, and I just happened to be the first person to jump on it. Solid deal.
Real quick before we get into that, I do want to talk about your 30 houses. That's a lot more than the 10 for the commercial or conventional loans you can get. How do you end up getting that financing on that many?
Yeah, so I got to the 10 limit, like you said, and I was like, how do like I know people, I see people on social media that have dozens and hundreds of houses. Like there's got to be a way, but yeah, the banks were like, no, like we cap you at 10. So then I realized like, okay, I can't remember exactly where I discovered the information, but I realized like, okay, I need to start going commercial, get commercial loans and make sure like everything's in my LLC, and so then I started putting everything in my LLC. The first 10 were just in my personal name, which looking back, I wouldn't have done that again. But um, yeah, everything was in the LLC there going forward. So I started working with banks and getting commercial loan products from there forward.
Awesome. I know that like when I was kind of hitting my cap with the conventional loans, and then I got my first non QM loan. the application process was such an incredible breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, do you remember going through that, or did something similar happen with you where like instead of taking like 6 months to get lenders everything that they're asking for, and like basically a file cabinet full of stuff, uh, and then all of a sudden a lender just says, hey, we just need like your credit, just send us your bank statements, and that was pretty much it. Maybe a copy of your, oh yeah, they wanted to see my current mortgage statements. That was about it. And then they're like, you're approved. Like, what else do you need? No, we're good. I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was very similar. Like the regular lenders, the conventional lenders I was working with is like you have to get so much stuff, pay stubs and bank statements, tax returns, and leases for every house that you have, and like I said, mortgage statements and all this stuff. And then I go to the first commercial loan, and they're like, yeah, we'll run your credit. Here's like a personal financial statement. Can you fill this out for me? Maybe give me a rent roll. And then yeah, it's just like yeah, we'll underwrite the deal, and then it's like okay, yeah, we're clear to close. It's a lot different. There's of course there's give and takes. So there's some cons to the commercial side, but if you're trying to grow, there's it's super simple.
Yeah, I remember that, clear to close. Like that, I thought that was a typo when they sent that to me. I'm like, don't you mean send me a bunch more stuff? Like, what is this clear to close? It's like the best. It's like the best words to hear in the real estate industry in my ears. I just thought that was funny.
Now, David, you talked about having just a couple of problems with commercial loans. What are the downsides in your opinion?
So I'm not a big fan of like the main lenders that I use. They usually use like 20, maybe 25 year, like amortizations. So of course my payments are gonna be a lot higher. Sometimes they'll throw in like a 5, 7, 10 year balloon, or I've got to refinance it, or there's a rate call. The interest rate's not fixed for 30 years like it would be with your regular conventional loan. So just things like that. But again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like just bake that into your costs. Bake that into your when you're first analyzing the deal. They say you make your money on the deal when you buy it, not when you sell it. So it's very applicable to this as well.
And so your portfolio at that time as 30 single family homes, and then you started kind of going into the commercial realm. Real quick though, I want to continue and just dive in just a little bit on those homes because I think that's awesome. How much do you think you're netting from all your properties, if you don't mind sharing, just from all your single family homes?
When I had 30, or you
Hmm.
mean like presently, or okay? So when I was at 30 houses, it was probably so initially my first goal was like I just want to cash flow enough to pay my own mortgage, and I think my mortgage was like $2,000 at the time at old house. Of course, you grow to your income, right? But yeah, it was like $2,000. So I hit that mark. Probably, if I had to guess, probably around like 12 houses, something like that, in that ballpark. But once I hit 30, I think I was probably netting close to like 4,500, maybe somewhere 5 grand, something like that per month. But then you get the HVAC unit's got to be replaced 1 month, and so it never worked out perfect where you're netting that every single month.
That's awesome, and that's a good lifestyle for a lot of people, right? Like an extra $5,000 a month that's life changing. So that's awesome, man.
I'm guessing you have a property manager in place, right?
Yeah, so around like 10 houses, that's when I was like, I can no longer manage myself, so I've got to outsource. Um, I had a property manager, well, backtrack. So when I first got in and started investing, I hired a property manager, and I used them for a while. But I was like, this is like a couple $100 a month that I'm paying them. Like I can do this myself. So I got rid of them and self-managed from like 3 houses to 10 houses, and then I was like, okay, that was stupid. Let me go back to them. So it's kind of like going back to your ex, like, hey, will you take me back, please? Yeah.
Nice. So when you start getting like 30, 50 houses, even though you have a property manager, how much time would you just have to guess that you're still putting into managing the manager, or like having to respond to certain requests or maintenance, like, hey, this is going to cost 2 grand? How much time a week would you say kind of goes into that? And I'm sure it varies.
Yeah, of course it varies. It's extremely minimal. I'm still working a full-time job with the military, which is somewhat demanding at times. But yeah, it's minimal. I would say, right now I've got a portfolio around like 50 to 60 houses, and I might spend 5 hours a week just kind of catching up on emails. And I've got a virtual assistant, so she helps out a lot. I just kind of send like my accounting stuff to her, and she handles that. But it's minimal for sure.
Gotcha. When it comes to actually, like, not when it comes to the books or anything like that, but when it comes to like the requests from the property manager to like a repair that needs done or something that happened to one of your properties, Is that about 5 hours a week, or is it most of that just admin of keeping the book straight?
Most of it's probably just admin. Yeah, I got a text this morning. I was at the gym, and my property manager texted me, and he was like, "Hey, one of the windows. Don't ask me how, but he said it fell out of the casing. It just fell out of the window hole. So he was like, "Do you want me to see if we can get that repaired, or just put it in like a new window?" So I mean, that literally 30 seconds. I was like, "Hey, just throw in a new window." But yeah, I'll say 5 hours a week is mainly just bookkeeping and more so forwarding stuff over to the VA for accounting and record keeping.
When it comes to this VA, is this somebody that you found on your own, or is there some sort of a company that you pay that found the real estate VA for you?
Yeah, so out of the blue, a random Facebook friend of mine just texted me or PM me and was like, "Hey, like I've got this company. I think she's called Digimatch or something like that. I don't really exactly remember what her business name is, but she's like, you just tell me what you need and I'll find the perfect fit. She's got a network of 200 or 300 VAs that are all looking for work. So I just spent like a week and I wrote down like all these things I wanted to get done. Create a website or create shirts or just all these different spreadsheets and things that I want to build out. So I just sent her that list, and then she found a couple of VAs and was like, "Hey, interview these, see what you like." And then I stuck with one, and she's been with me for a while now. I really like her. She helps out a ton.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. So you've got 50 units, obviously 50 plus units. With that many units, a lot of weird things are bound to happen. In your experience, like what's the weirdest thing that's happened to you or one of your properties as a real estate investor?
Yeah. So just for a little context, so I just turned 34 like 2 weeks ago. So a couple years back, I was like, I really want to hit. I think it was like I really want to get 10 houses before I turn 30 or something like that. So it was like you know, January and I'm at 9 houses. So, I was just like one house short. My birthday was here in like a couple weeks. So, yeah, I did what everybody would do. I went out and bought a stupid deal. So, uh, just to stay true to my goal. But, yeah, that was a huge mistake. I really rushed the deal. I was more so focused on just like meeting my goal of 10 houses before 30 that, it was like, hey, this house is somewhat discounted. Let me just jump on it. So I bought this house. It was in an area that I would never purchase in. It was a price that I paid too much for it. And then throughout the renovation phase, like things were getting stolen. Like, people were coming inside the house, people were sleeping inside the house, and it was just like a headache. And then one day my contractor called me and was like, "Hey, like, did you have somebody come out here to place the garage door?" And I was like, "No, it's a new garage door, like not at all." And then he was like, "Well, somebody disassembled, like it's a detached garage, so it's 3 walls and a door." And he's like, somebody disassembled like an entire wall. They took all the vinyl, the wood, the 2x4s, everything, and then they took the garage door with them. So that was probably my craziest experience so far, is just having somebody like so peacefully and tactically disassemble a wall and take a door.
Wow. What area was this in, if you don't mind asking?
It was in Richmond. It's like South Side Richmond for anybody that's local. Like it's like south of the James, kind of. It's north of Chesterfield, but south of the James River. So it's just like an area that it's slowly coming around. But this was 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't at that point yet.
I drove through. I think I've drove through Richmond once. Is that the town where they have like big cigarette factories?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the famous cigarette towers right before Richmond. Yeah.
I don't know why. That's all I remember about that town.
I hope you remember Virginia more than just
Yeah.
our cigarette tower. But
No,
uh,
that that's all I remember. Really.
Just an ignorant North Idaho guy, a cigarette tower.
yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
obviously you
probably
bought that property and it wasn't exactly in like an A plus neighborhood, I'm assuming, or anything, right?
yeah, yeah. It was like a probably yeah.
And do you still own that property today?
No, got it rid of it as quick as I could. So that one was, I bought it for like $45,000, and I probably put in like $50,000 into it. All in, we'll just call it $100,000, and I think I sold it for like 90. Like it was, I never should have bought it. The only reason I bought it is because I was just trying to stay true to myself and meet my own personal goal. But in doing so, it cost me quite a few $1,000s. So quite an expensive learning lesson.
Yeah, but if I had to guess, like, do you feel like you learn more from your successes or your failures?
The failures for sure. Yeah, that's you do like success. You have a success, and you're like, yeah, let's do it again. But you have a failure, and like, I am never doing that again. Like that is not going to happen again.
That's it's one of the things where you bought emotionally instead of logically, is that correct?
Absolutely, 100%.
So number aside in your portfolio, you learn never to do that again. What are you looking forward to now? Like, what makes a deal for you, and where do you want to be in the next 5 years as an investor?
Yeah, so now I'm getting my name out there a lot more now. I've been posting on social media for the past few years, but like now I'm trying to make it more of like my VA post, a couple times a day for me, and I'm just trying to really get my name out there. So I just closed my first commercial deal last month, almost 30 days ago. So that was really exciting, and it's similar, like Nick, you were saying earlier, like going from like the conventional loans to the commercial loans. It's very similar going from residential to commercial deals. It's like, wow, that was so much like easier. I felt like it was just bigger numbers, but it's a lot smoother of a process. So yeah, I'm still going to take down single family deals and everything, but really moving more so into the commercial world.
And why do you think it is, for the people listening, why do you think it is so much easier to get a commercial loan? Is it because the lenders are doing maybe the bulk of the due diligence on their end to fund the deal, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. The lender there, it's more so typically they're going to keep those loans in house. They're not going to sell them, like they do like residential loans. They might write the loan and originate the loan, but then shortly a few months later they sell the loan to another bank. But these larger deals, like it seems like they like to keep those in house. So they're doing a lot more of their own underwriting and analyzing the deals just to make sure that their skin is in the game too, essentially. So there's just a lot more help. It's more team oriented than just doing this by yourself.
And can we talk about that commercial deal real quick? It's kind of vague as far as from a commercial standpoint, but what exactly is the deal? How much did you buy it for, and what do you plan on doing with it?
Yeah, this deal. So back in September of 22, I went to this local mastermind, like a 3-day meeting or meetup, and I met a lot of people there that were just doing huge deals, and I was like, I've done 60, 70 houses, like, or I hope I can do this too. It kind of gave me the motivation to get out there and go the stack. Go from like slowly doubling in your deals. But so I went to this meeting. I left there. I was just very motivated. So I started calling around different commercial brokers and everybody, and just telling them like, hey, like I'm new to the commercial space, but I'm not new to real estate. This is what a portfolio looks like. Like if you have a deal that fits this criteria, like please send it my way. Um, so I talked to dozens of brokers, and like nobody would take me serious because I hadn't done a commercial deal yet. So kind of getting my foot in the door was pretty difficult. But one broker finally found a deal that kind of fit what I was looking for, so he sent it to me. And yeah, it was a medical building that they were asking like 1.1 million for. So and the rents on it were like 12,000 a month, triple net. So easy 10 cap there. So I went and looked at this medical office, and while I was there, the tenant was like, "Yeah, we've got this other building that's for sale as well. Like, same company and everything. It's the city away." So they introduced that one to me. I think that one they were asking like 1.5 million, so it was a little bit bigger. But the rents on that one were, I don't know, probably like another like 13, 14,000, something like that, triple net as well. So I was like, hey, like I'm very interested in these deals, but the only way I can do it is if you help me out with the financing. Like I don't have enough cash on hand, and I didn't really want to bring on a partner for my first commercial deal. I kind of wanted to get something under my belt before I started bringing on partners or raising capital. So yeah, I was interested in it, made my offer. We did a little bit of negotiating back and forth, but we finally settled on a price and terms that uh, are outstanding. We got 2.5% interest seller carry, which is in this market where you're looking at sevens or eights. That's a huge discount there. Yeah, it's just a home run deal. From my point of view for my first commercial deal.
Can you talk a little bit about how you negotiated that deal?
Yeah, so this it was actually like it's a commercial deal. It's two medical buildings, two doctor offices. It's like 20,000 square feet or something like that. But the person that owned it, her brother was a residential realtor, so she had him listed. But he listed it on the residential MLS. So this wasn't like on LoopNet or any sites that list typical commercial deals. This was like on it wasn't on Zillow either. Like it was only on the MLS. So I guess like you had to kind of know to go look. Maybe you have MLS access. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but you had to go look in like this special secret place for commercial deals on the residential MLS, and that's where it was. Um, so not a lot of people saw it. So when I walked the property, they were just saying like, yeah, no one's shown interest in it. Like no one's come, make an offer. Nobody's even toured it or anything like that. And my agent's like whispering in my ear, he's like, yeah, it's because they listed it. Like nobody can find it. Yeah. So, but when you're walking any kind of property and the person's saying like nobody's had interest in it, that's like like I love hearing that, because that tells me like, they're probably going to negotiate a little bit harder with you, or a little bit easier, I should say.
Yeah, they're showing all their cards right away.
Yeah, yeah, things that experienced people would never do, But like, if it were mine, I'd be like, I've had so much interest in it, like, you need to make an offer today or tomorrow, or you're probably going to miss out. But
Right. Yeah. Got a lot of stuff happening today. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, none of that though. They were just like, yeah, no one's interested in it. So, yeah, so I think all in all, between the two, they're asking 2.6 million. So I went and looked at the tax assessment, and the tax assessment was also 2.6 million. So that's another thing as an experienced investor, like, tax assessments are low. The tax assessments typically, I mean, they don't know the condition of the property, but usually, like if they're asking the tax assessment, like that's probably gonna be a good deal. So, but I knew that they hadn't had any interest in it.
So the listing agent didn't bother trying to figure pricing based off the actual income, which is what he should have done on a commercial property. Instead, he was trying to go off maybe comps, couldn't find any comps, so just went off the assessment value. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, be careful who you hire as a real estate agent out there, because they are not all created equally.
Yeah, I mean, she was just trying to work with family, and I get that,
Yeah, there's more to this game than, putting a house on the internet or, a property on the internet. Yeah.
So you got these commercial loans, and they're both obviously occupied with businesses right now. Are you going to keep those businesses in there for the time being?
Yeah, their leases are good for another 3 years. So I'm going to honor, but they've been there for 18 years, so they're probably going to stay. But the loan that I got, like I said, I told them, like, I'll give you, I'll pay what you're asking, the 2.6, I'll pay that, but I need you to carry 25% of that, like, at second place, second position lien. So they agreed. At first, initially, I was like, I just need you to carry 25% of that. I didn't offer interest or anything like that, and I was like 30 years, kind of shot for the stars or shot for the moon. And then they came back, they're like, well, we need some kind of interest. So they were like, I was like, okay, let's do like 2.5, and they agreed. And they still, I think we ended up doing like a 15-year amortization. Um, but still, I mean, I got into the deal with only 5% down. Like, I'll take that.
Is there just one tenant in both these buildings, or how many tenants are there?
Yeah, it's the same company. It's probably one of the largest medical practices in Central Virginia. They've been there for a very long time, and that did make me like kind of hesitate a little bit because they are single tenant occupied. On a deal this large, if one tenant vacates, I've got to carry the whole mortgage. So, but the fact that they have been there for going on.
Let's say in 3 years they do decide that they want to move out or buy some new building or build something. How much advance notice do they have to give you, and how much time do you think you would have to get it refilled, and how difficult do you think it would be to refill based off your market?
So I think in the lease it says that they have to give me like a 90-day heads up. I would like more, of course, but basically what I'm doing is any money I make on the deal, like I'm not touching it, it's sitting in a bank account. So that way, if they do vacate in 3 years from now, there'll be like a year and a half worth of mortgage payments that I can make before I really start sweating it. But
Okay, so you're a smart cookie, to have reserves. It's a good idea.
yeah, I mean, like I said, like I've got a full-time job, I've got a decent portfolio. Like the monthly income right now is great, but I really want to make sure like I'm set up for success in the future.
And what I really like what you said initially, right, when you said you didn't want to jump into the first commercial deal with a partner, because maybe if you did have a partner, maybe they would want to draw from this, every 6 months or a year, and then maybe eventually you're not going to have a tenant at some point. They're not going to stay there for 1,000 years. So at some point this tenant will leave, and it's a good idea to have some reserves. And you never know who your partner is. Sometimes they always need money. And if they're taking money, you have to take the same amount of money, and you may not have the reserves that you need. So I think it's awesome that you jumped into a big deal like this and you were able to do it on your own. That way you can make your own smart decisions about how this will play out long term.
Yeah, and then there's just like it's my first commercial deal, so like, do I really want to bring on investors and partners, and I could fail on the deal. You never know. I don't want to risk anybody else's funds like that.
So going forward, obviously you're looking at more residential. Are you still looking at other commercial opportunities as well?
Yeah, this one is very exciting. I just closed it a month ago, so I'll probably let things cool down a little bit before I start heavily looking again. But I think now that I've got some experience under my belt, it'll be a lot easier to approach brokers and say, hey, like I'm back in the business.
Well, perfect. I think we're doing really good. Nick, do you have any final things before we start going into the
Yeah,
wind down?
one more question before we wind down a little bit. How's the market, the shift in the market that we're experiencing nationwide, has that affected you and your business much at all? And how do you anticipate the market potentially affecting your business this year?
Yeah, the so with the rates going up and everything, I think that houses are selling for a little bit less, so some of my values on my across my portfolio are dropping. But I think now is probably a very smart time to buy because here in 2 or 3 years when rates come back down to, I don't think we'll see twos and threes, but once they come back to like a nice four or so, I think that's really going to kind of like slingshot the effect of the home values. So it's a lot harder to find a deal right now because it's just the cash flow perspective. What's my mortgage going to be, and at 7-8% interest, 9% if you're doing like a DSCR or something like that. But so it's a lot harder to find a deal that qualifies for the loan right now. But I think if you can find something, it's going to be a phenomenal deal here in like 2 or 3 years with the refinance.
Yeah, definitely getting in the market right now is a really good time. Especially since there is a lot of uncertainty. Like you just mentioned, DSCR loans. I just got approved Friday to do DSCR loans, so I know exactly what my trajectory needs to be. I know what I need to be looking for, and I'm off to the races. We're analyzing properties right now, seeing if we can find something that fits that. Because making a move right now, I think it's going to be great, and we don't want to do it again, like we said, emotional. We want to do it logical. So I'm running all my numbers. I've got all my spreadsheets. We're making things happen. So well, cool. We'll kind of get down in the wind down. Is that okay here, Nick?
Yes, let's go.
Awesome. Well, first off, thanks so much, David, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate you being on here. Super cool stuff. I've enjoyed really hearing what you're doing and all about your portfolio and the way you've done it. So, yeah, really cool stuff. We will wind down the show with some predetermined questions. The first one is if you had one business or investing book you recommend every single person read, what would that be? And if it's the same answer as earlier, that's okay.
No, I'm not going to do that to you. Yeah, well, I guess sort of. My favorite book right now is the 10X Rule for sure. It's not specifically real estate related, but it's extremely motivational.
Grant Cardone is a powerhouse of a motivator for sure. I just did his Grant Cardone training that he had the other day, and I'm ready to fire. So it's great stuff. Next one is if you had $30 million gifted into one of your bank accounts, what would be the first thing you spend it on?
I would probably hire a team. There'd be a lot of money to work with. So, I would probably hire some boots on ground, some people that could do this full time because, I work full time. So to kind of get where I need to go is going to be a little bit slower of a process than if I had a team of 4, 5, 6 employees under me, going after it for me.
And then if you were to give any advice to a newer investor looking for his first or second deal, what advice would that be?
I guess I kind of touched on that earlier as well, but like just get your name out there. Whether you're doing your first deal, your second deal, or you haven't done a deal yet, like you're still learning a lot of stuff that you can put out there to kind of get your name out there and start getting kind of building your personal brand. So gaining some credibility.
Awesome. Good answer. I like that. Next question for you, David, is how do you define success?
So for me, my first milestone, I think success is always moving. The goals are always moving, but for me, it was like I just I want that flexibility of not having a mortgage payment. So my first milestone of success was making enough profit from my rentals to pay my own mortgage. Um, yeah, I would say just success overall is just kind of being able to do what you want to do and have a little more flexibility and not quite not stress over the financials or the time that you have in life.
For sure. It's good stuff. And the next one, when you're not investing, what do you do with your free time?
I've got a 6-year-old, 3-year-old, 1-year-old. So I don't quite remember what free time is right now. Uh, but once they go to bed, 10:30, something like that. Recently, in the past few months, I've really been trying to learn the guitar. So that's probably my favorite hobby right now is just trying to learn how to play some guitar.
Very cool. And I want to touch on this real quick. I know you're in the military. What do you do in the military right now?
Currently, I'm a recruiter.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Prior to this, I've done a lot of different things, mainly in field artillery.
Cool. Well, very awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for your service. We definitely appreciate that too. Last question. Where can people find you and find out more about you, social media channels or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm active on Instagram. You can find me at Deal with David. TikTok, I'm at Deal with David Sanford. Somebody already stole a Deal with David. Uh, LinkedIn, you can find me just David Sanford. I'm not really Facebook. I kind of leave for like just personal. But yeah, pretty much I'm on every other platform.
Awesome. Nick, any closing thoughts for me today?
Yeah, my closing thoughts. I just I want to point out again to the audience just how part-time real estate investing can be if you let it, and just what a massive portfolio this guy David's been able to build while working a full-time job the entire time. It's pretty incredible. Yeah, I think that's unique, and you don't come across as like a really stressed out person to me, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you
No,
seem to
I try.
have your stuff in order. So kudos to you. Thanks for being on, and I hope people get a lot of value out of this. So yeah, thanks for being on again.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks everybody. See ya.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.